Hey darlings, it's Miss Naylor. We're going to get started on your delayed adjective assignment today. So first of all, let's all put our name. We don't ever want to forget that in our class period. That way if it gets lost, we know who to return it to. We're going to be doing some more sentence composing tools. So when we talk about sentence composing, I want you to think about a sentence kind of like a puzzle. And the parts of the sentence are like the pieces. And unlike maybe a real puzzle, when we're talking about sentences, sometimes the pieces can go in different orders. So last week we learned about opening adjectives, and that was an adjective or an adjective phrase at the beginning of a sentence. Today we're going to learn about delayed adjectives. They're kind of the same thing, except that delayed adjectives are in the middle or the end of a sentence, and they describe something that comes before them in the sentence. So my arrow is always going to go backwards today, okay? Let's go ahead and redefine adjective. Hopefully you did your adjective homework last night like you were supposed to your skills review. So this part should be super easy because we've reviewed it, right? So an adjective is what kind, answers what kind. Remember, if I'm writing it, you should be writing it too. Which one? Or how many? Let's read our definition. An adjective placed after the word is described. That's the definition of delayed adjective. And here's some more details. The adjective may be a single adjective or the first word in an adjective phrase. Commas punctuate and separate the delayed adjectives or adjective phrases from the other parts of the sentence. 1 comma if the delayed adjective ends the sentence. 2 if it occurs earlier. Let's highlight those two rules. So I'm going to make one rule, 1 comma if the delayed adjective ends the sentence. And then I'm going to highlight my other rule, 2 if it occurs earlier. So that's going to be really important, watching for where those commas go today. Here's an example of a single adjective. He paused in his humming song, and the bear's ears stiffened, alert. Alert is the adjective here, right? And it's describing the bear's ears. And here's my comma. It ends the sentence. There's 1 comma before it. I'm going to draw an arrow back to ears because that's what it describes. The ears are alert. And here's one with an adjective phrase at the end of a sentence. Gideon sat upright, tense as a bowstring. So here's my adjective phrase, tense as a bowstring. Because at the end of my sentence, it only gets 1 comma. And then I'm going to draw my arrow. Who was tense as a bowstring? Which person? Gideon. Gideon, yes. I stared at the trees, aware of an eerie silence descending over the forest. Ooh, kind of creepy, right? Let's highlight that adjective phrase. It's at the end of the sentence, so it only gets 1 comma. And I'm going to draw an arrow. Who was aware of an eerie silence descending over the forest? Which person, right? Why, I was. Let's take a look at some in the middle of sentences too, okay? A woman of 50 or so, plump with frizzy gray hair, came toward them. Now, that part in the center is my delayed adjective. So here's one in the middle of a sentence. Plump with frizzy gray hair. Since it's in the middle, I have to follow that second rule and make sure it has 2 commas. Circle your commas. And then who or what is plump with frizzy gray hair? The woman is. Right? So if I were switching this around, like a woman, which woman? The woman who is plump with frizzy gray hair. Okay? A circle of grass, smooth as a lawn, met her eyes, with dark trees dancing all around it. Smooth as a lawn is my adjective phrase. It gets 2 commas because it's in the middle of my sentence. And I'm going to draw my arrow back to the circle of grass, right? Because that is what it's describing. That's what is smooth as a lawn. Which circle of grass? The one that smooth as a lawn. Jonas felt more and more certain that the destination lay ahead of him, very near now in the night that was approaching. Beautifully done. Since this is at the end of my sentence, I'm going to circle my comma. And what was very near now in the night that was approaching? Well, that was the destination. So which destination? The destination that is very near now in the night that was approaching. See? I hope that as you've gotten all of your highlighting and circled all of your commas and drawn all of your arrows, because those are going to be something we're going to expect to see on your paper. Now, these were all single delayed adjectives, right? There's only one. But you can have multiples, which we also saw with those opening adjectives, right? So, the Indian lay there on the floor of the cupboard, stiff and stark. So here we have two. Stiff and stark. And what was stiff and stark? The Indian was. So again, we're answering the question, which Indian, or what kind of Indian? The stiff and stark Indian, right? And then these are at the very end, so they get a comma beforehand, just one. A voice suddenly shouted at me, loud and strong and angry, although I couldn't understand the words. So we have three delayed adjectives here in the middle of a sentence, right? Now, even though they're in the middle, they always describe something before them because they're delayed adjectives. And what was loud and strong and angry? Well, the voice was. So which voice? The loud, strong, and angry voice, right? And our last example on this page, the first thing Rainford's eyes discerned was the largest man Rainsford had ever seen, a gigantic creature, fierce as a tiger, strong, but actually gentle as a baby. So I actually have three different adjective phrases here. I have an adjective phrase, an adjective, and an adjective phrase, right? But they all describe the same thing, the man. Because the man was gentle as a baby, the man was strong, the man was fierce as a tiger, right? Let's turn to the next page. All right, we're going to do the imitating today. Remember how last week we broke our sentence down into parts, we figured out what the pieces were, and then we tried to make a sentence like it. And I want you to think about this as you're going. I really want you to try your best on this. Okay? It's tough. It's not easy stuff, but we're going to try awfully hard to make it work. Okay? Here's my example. Through her tears, she could see Charles Wallace standing there, very small, very white. Now, I love this book, A Wrinkle in Time, and I love Charles Wallace and his big sister who's talking about him here, or who is the her and the she here. And let's figure out what pieces the author used to create this really pretty sentence, okay? We start with a prepositional phrase, through her tears. Now, if you've forgotten what a preposition is, you have an iPad in front of you, so you can always pause the video, look up prepositions really quick, and take a look, all right? She is my subject and could see. There's my predicate, right? I have Charles Wallace, which is technically my direct object, but we haven't gotten there yet. So I just want you to think about it as a noun, okay? Then, we learned these. We just learned a little bit about them, right? But here we have this ing, right? We have a participial phrase. So you're just going to want to add an ing verb. Then here we have our delayed adjectives, right? Very small and very white. Now let's figure out. First I'm going to highlight them. Very small, very white. Here's the comma before very small, and here's the comma before very white. I have two, so they each get their own comma, right? Very important. And then who or what is very small and very white? Why, Charles Wallace is, right? So now I'm going to write an example. I have to tell you a secret. Just because I write an example doesn't mean you don't have to do it, okay? So I'm going to write an example, but you're still responsible for writing your own sentence here, okay? That happened to a few people last week, and they lost points and they were sad. We don't want that for you, okay? So here's my model for you. Near the door. That's my prepositional phrase. Now I need my subject and my verb. He could hear the puppy. That's my direct object. Whimpering outside. There's my participial phrase. Comma. Very cute. Comma. Very sad. Beautifully done, right? Now, I wrote my sentence, but I'm not finished yet. Anything that I write on here today, I need to make sure I highlight my delayed adjectives. So here are my delayed adjectives, very cute, very sad. I want to circle my commas. There are my commas. And then I need to draw my arrows every single time, okay? That was another thing people lost points for and they were sad, and we don't want that to happen to you, okay? Now, I'd like you to write one for number 1 and for number 2. So let's go through the parts for number 2, okay? Oh, sorry, didn't mean to go off screen. The door, remember we know this is an article. Door is my subject and swung is my verb. Then I have an adverb. How did it swing? Well, it swung wide. And then, when did it happen, right? And an elderly woman, this is my conjunction. It's a coordinating conjunction. So we're making a compound sentence. You might not want to write these up kind of at this funny angle like I am because you might want that space for your sentence, and that's okay. Okay? An elderly woman, so again, we have another article, and we have our subject, the woman. And this is an adjective describing her. What kind of woman? An elderly woman. Frail and toothless. This is my delayed adjective. And we'll underline and draw or highlight and draw errors in a second. Stepped out. I have another verb here. It's acting like a predicate, right? And a preposition. If you look, I have a compound sentence. Here's my conjunction. Subject, verb, or subject, predicate, right? That's the simple predicate for that. Okay? Let's highlight our delayed adjective, frail and toothless. It's a delayed adjective in the middle of a sentence. So that means it gets 2 commas. And then I have to draw my arrow. So who is frail and toothless? The woman was. I want you to look at number 3 for just a second, and I want you to cross it out. Nice and neat. Don't make a great big mess on your paper, and I want you to write skip. You're only responsible for number 1 and number 2 on this page. You can pause the video right now and do those. Now that you're back, we're going to move on to expanding. Okay? These are my favorite. They're so much fun. Now you do have to write out your sentence for expanding, okay? But what we need to identify is what we're going to be describing, okay? So here's the caret mark for number 1. That's where I'm going to add in, okay? The raft continued on, and they smelled a peculiar odor. Well, if this is where I'm going to add a delayed adjective, the noun right before that is the odor, okay? So my arrow is going to come back to here. So I need some words that describe the peculiar odor. Here is my model. You can copy down my model, but you still have to write your own sentence, and you shouldn't be using the words from my example, from my model, in your sentence. You need to come up with your own adjectives. Otherwise, Mrs. Rains and I can't tell if you've really understood how to add an adjective or if you just copied what I wrote, okay? So I'm not trying to be mean. Please don't take me the wrong way, but it is super important that you do it properly. So here's mine. I'm writing out the whole sentence because it's super important that we write it out, right? We're writing a sentence and adding to it. We're not just writing some words off to the side. So the raft continued on. And you'll use the exact same sentence, comma. And they smelled a peculiar odor. I was worried for a second I misspelled that, but I didn't, so we're good. Now, I'm going to have my delayed adjective here, so here's my comma. Rancid and death-like. Whew! That's an awful odor. Maybe yours can be more pleasant than mine. Now I'm going to highlight. In your sentence, you'll highlight too. And draw my arrows just like you will in your sentence. Okay? Now, you're going to write yours for number 1. And you need to have 2 delayed adjectives in it, just like I did. And on number 2, you're going to write your own. Now remember, on every one of these, you have to highlight your adjectives, you have to draw your arrows, you have to circle your commas, okay? Here's your carrot. And if this is my sentence, at one point a raven, insert delayed adjective here, came flapping out from a bush and flew alongside us. His horse talk, weird and hollow. I need to add words here that describe something before that. So what's my noun before here? Okay, what noun does it make the most sense to describe before that? And on number 3, you're going to write your own. Laughter, delayed adjective, filled the room. There's only one noun before that, so you know what you got to describe. For both of these, you can choose how many and what kind of delayed adjectives, if it's just a delayed adjective or a delayed adjective phrase, okay? Best of luck. Make sure that you do all of the things you're supposed to do, circling and highlighting and arrow drawing. You can always rewind if you need to review something, okay? Just like last time, Mrs. Rains and I will be checking these, okay? So you need to make sure you take your time and do a very good job. Best of luck.